Okay, this is the mock interview for Basic Communications for Seth McDivitt. All right, go ahead.
What is this speech about?
It's about how, as Christians, we all interpret texts. We all have to read and understand Scripture. And some of those stories and forms are from 2,000 years ago. And I propose in the speech, a way forward for Christians to sort of practice crossing that cultural bridge between our culture and the story forms and the people who lived 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. And that can help the church interpret these texts. In general, the speech encourages broad reading for Christians. It will help dispel some fears about knowing and understanding Scripture. And it speaks a little bit about the profit and exposure of Christians to good quality literature, to good books.
You talk about reading classics. Why is it important for the everyday Christian? How does that help a normal church member?
For the normal church member, they are as responsible as a pastor is for understanding meaning in what they read. And crossing the bridge of 100 years or of 200 years, like reading a novel from 300 years ago, is a lot easier than crossing the bridge to a story form like a parable that's from 3,000 years ago. And so practicing crossing that bridge helps us interpret those texts more consistently, and they give us practice. So see those as smaller bridges to cross, and that for the normal everyday church member, it'll be easier to understand David Copperfield than it will be for them to understand a parable. But in reading David Copperfield and understanding it, it'll make it easier for them to cross the bridge to that farther cultural story form or piece of literature.
What does that have to do with liberal arts education?
Liberal arts education in the United States is increasingly being sidestepped for forms of job training. I'm not an opponent of math and science and technology, but it is becoming less and less important to expose children and students to good literature. They're reading less and less books. The books they are reading are less and less challenging to their minds. And that's happening at the elementary level, that's happening at the high school level, that's happening at the college level. And it's incredibly important for Christians in our day, not just for the church, but for a society as a whole, to train people in the classic liberal arts. It's important because education is not just about teaching you how to do a job, it's about forming you as a person. And these things can help make us better citizens. They can help us understand how our society got to be where it is. History alone doesn't do that. And a lot of study of history involves looking at literature and art and those things that they teach that are increasingly becoming defunded and erased from our school programs. Liberal arts education is not something that has to be done by the schools, but as churches, we can encourage our people to read good books. We can support reading and reading programs in our schools, and we can, one of the ways that I found best to promote reading among our children and among our church members is to give away good books. And Christian books are great for that, but it also helps to expose your people to just good books in general so that they can cross that cultural bridge and practice. So when they come to a parable and they wonder what it means, it won't be as difficult for them to find out that meaning. So that's one of the goals of this speech. That's what it has to do with how it extends to the rest of society.